Welcome back, family, to RiseWell TV. If you were with us for part 1, you know we left Randy standing on the wet floor of the Golden Platter diner. At 16 years old, he had just been promoted to kitchen prep, earning $8 an hour. To a boy whose siblings were starving, that raise felt like a small fortune. But to a young man carrying a family legacy fractured by debt, it was merely a single brick at the base of a skyscraper. Many people get stuck in the comfort of a minor upgrade. They get a small raise, a slightly better title, and they settle. They stop pushing. They forget that the storm outside hasn't stopped just because they found a slightly bigger umbrella. But Randy wasn't looking for an umbrella. He was looking to change the weather. Let's re-enter his world. Let's look at the exact moment a laborer began to transform into a leader. This is part 2 of Letter 3 Sender, Randy from dishwasher to full-blown all-services manpower supply company. If there is one thing I learned in the backrooms of commercial kitchens and the cold concrete bays of local warehouses, it is this: value is not given, it is demonstrated. When Mr. Henderson promoted me to kitchen prep, my daily routine shifted from a chaotic sprint against a mountain of porcelain to a calculated lesson in logistics. Kitchen prep isn't just about chopping vegetables or portioning meat, it's about timing, inventory, and maximizing resources. I learned how a single delayed shipment of poultry could paralyze an entire evening shift, causing customers to leave and profits to plummet. I began to view the diner not as a place of employment, but as a living, breathing machine. My daily schedule became an assembly line of discipline. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. My joints often felt stiff from the previous night's physical labor, but the sight of my mother resting on her makeshift mattress was an immediate jolt of adrenaline. By 5:30 a.m. I was at the diner, checking the refrigeration units, cross-referencing the inventory sheets, and ensuring that everything was immaculate before the morning line cooks arrived. I worked through the frantic breakfast and lunch rushes until 3:30 p.m. Then, instead of resting, I sprinted 4 blocks to the local library. There, under the cold fluorescent lights, I spent 2 hours studying my night school modules, frantically absorbing algebra, literature, and history before my formal classes began at 6:00 p.m. By 10:00 p.m., when school concluded, I returned to the diner for a 3-hour deep cleaning contract shift that Mr. Henderson allowed me to take on for extra cash. I would crawl into my own bed at 2:00 a.m., only to repeat the cycle 2.5 hours later. My siblings, Maya and Leo, became my operational partners at home. Since they had to pause their formal schooling, I used my library time to borrow textbooks. Every night, I left detailed lesson plans on our small kitchen table. Maya, showing a maturity far beyond her 12 years, became the household administrator. She managed our meager food budget down to the single penny, cooked the meals, administered our mother's complex medication schedule, and ensured that 9-year-old Leo and 5-year-old Toby spent at least 3 hours a day studying their reading and mathematics. We were a family operating as a survival unit. We did not discuss our hardships, we discussed our daily objectives. 6 months into my role as kitchen prep, Mr. Henderson made good on his promise to introduce me to other local business owners. One chilly Tuesday morning, a man named Vance walked into the diner. Marcus was a broad-shouldered, no-nonsense individual who owned Vance Logistics and Distribution, a massive warehouse complex near the city rail lines that handled freight cargo for consumer goods. Marcus sat at the counter, drank his black coffee, and watched me unload a massive delivery truck. I didn't know he was watching. I was simply doing what I always did, carrying 2 70-pound crates of frozen goods simultaneously, walking with a steady, purposeful pace, ensuring that the cold chain wasn't broken. When I finished, Mr. Henderson called me over. "Randy, this is Marcus," Mr. Henderson said. "He needs extra hands for a massive structural reorganization at his main facility. It's night work, 3rd shift, unloading cross-dock freight. I told him you're the most reliable worker in this zip code." Marcus looked at me, his eyes assessing my lean frame. "The pay is $12 an hour, Randy, but it's brutal labor. It's 4-hour blocks from midnight to 4:00 a.m. If you miss a single shift or if you slow down the conveyor lines, you're done. Can you handle that on top of whatever else you're doing?" My mind rapidly calculated the math. $12 an hour, 4 hours a night. That was an extra $48 a day, nearly $250 a week. That was the exact amount needed to pay for my mother's new specialized blood pressure and kidney medications without sacrificing our weekly grocery allowance. "I will be there at 11:45 p.m. tonight, Mr. Vance," I replied. "The line won't slow down because of me." That night, I entered the world of industrial logistics. The warehouse was an imposing labyrinth of steel racking, roaring forklifts, and endless rows of wooden pallets. The air was thick with the smell of diesel fluid, cardboard, and industrial dust. It was completely different from the humid, aromatic atmosphere of the diner. Here, speed and raw physical endurance were the only metrics that mattered. My job was simple yet exhausting: transfer heavy boxes from inbound shipping containers onto the automated sorting conveyors. The boxes contained everything from electronic components to heavy automotive parts. Within 30 minutes, my shirt was completely soaked through with sweat. My shoulders burned as if they were on fire, and my fingers felt stiff inside my heavy canvas work gloves. Beside me on the line were men 10, 15 years older than me. Many of them spent the shift complaining about the management, slowing down their pace the moment the supervisor walked out of sight, and taking extended breaks in the restrooms. I did the opposite. I kept my head down, locked my eyes onto the incoming freight, and maintained a rhythmic, unyielding pace. I realized very quickly that the warehouse had a major operational flaw: turnover. Every single week, Marcus Vance would hire 5 or 6 new casual laborers to fill the night shifts. And every single week, half of them would quit after their first night, or simply fail to show up when the weather turned bad or their bodies grew too sore. This constant unpredictability cost the warehouse thousands of dollars in delayed shipments and operational inefficiencies. One evening, during our designated 15-minute break at 2:00 a.m., I sat on an empty pallet next to a young guy named Carlos. Carlos was 19, incredibly strong but deeply discouraged. He had been laid off from a construction site and was struggling to support his young daughter. "I don't think I can keep coming back here, man," Carlos said, rubbing his aching wrists. "The supervisors treat us like mechanical parts. If we slow down, they yell. If we ask for consistent hours, they tell us we're just temporary help and can leave if we don't like it. There's no security." As I listened to Carlos, a spark ignited in my mind. It was a moment of profound clarity that changed the entire trajectory of my life. I looked around the massive warehouse floor. I saw Marcus Vance standing by his elevated glass office, looking stressed, staring at a clipboard containing a list of absent workers for the upcoming morning shift. Then I looked at Carlos, a dedicated, hardworking guy who desperately wanted security, but felt alienated by the cold, transactional nature of the corporate environment. The problem wasn't a lack of work. The problem wasn't a lack of workers. The problem was the bridge between them. The warehouse needed a reliable, disciplined, predictable workforce. The workers needed dignity, consistent hours, and someone who actually looked out for their well-being. I stood up, walked away from the break area, and marched straight up the steel stairs to Marcus Vance's office. I knocked firmly on the glass door. Marcus looked up, surprised to see a sweat-drenched 16-year-old night laborer standing at his door at 2 in the morning. He waved me in. "What's wrong, Randy? Injury?" he asked, his tone guarded. "No, Mr. Vance, everything is fine with my health," I said, standing straight. "But I see your daily labor schedule. You're short 3 men on the West Dock right now, which means your outbound freight to the rail terminal is going to be late by at least 45 minutes. Marcus slammed his clipboard onto the desk. "Tell me something I don't know, kid. Half these casual workers have no work ethic. They collect their daily cash pay and disappear. It's a logistics nightmare." "I can fix it for you," I said clearly. Marcus paused, staring at me. You're a kid on the line. How are you going to fix a structural labor shortage?" "Let me handle the staffing for the West Dock starting next week," I proposed, my heart pounding against my ribs, though my voice remained absolutely level. "Don't hire individual casual laborers through the temporary agencies anymore. Let me bring in a dedicated crew of 5 men. I will personally train them. I will personally guarantee they arrive 15 minutes before the shift starts. If any of them fails to show up, I will work their shift myself for free. You pay me a flat contract rate for the dock's output, and I will handle the payroll and management of the men." Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, narrowing his eyes. He wasn't looking at a teenager anymore. He was looking at an independent contractor trying to pitch a service. "And what do you get out of this, Randy?" "Efficiency for your company and consistent, fair pay for my crew," I replied. "All I ask is a contract rate of $15 per man-hour. I will manage their schedules and guarantee the performance." Marcus calculated the numbers in his head. The temporary agencies charged him $17 an hour, and half the time, the workers they sent were completely untrained or unreliable. My offer was cheaper, and it came with a personal guarantee of 0 downtime. "You're 16, Randy. You can't legally sign an independent corporate contract," Marcus noted, pointing out the cold legal reality. "My mother is a former educator, Mr. Vance. She can legally co-sign any operational agreement as my guardian," I countered immediately, having already thought through the legal hurdles. "Give me a 2-week trial period for the West Dock. If our output drops by even a single percentage point, cancel the arrangement and put me back on the manual line at $12 an hour. You have absolutely nothing to lose." Marcus stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then a slow smile crept across his stern face. He reached across the desk and shook my hand. "2 weeks, Randy. If you fail, you're back on the line, and I don't want to hear another word about management from you." The moment I stepped out of that office, I didn't celebrate. I went straight back to the break area and found Carlos. I also approached 3 other workers on the line whom I had observed over the past few weeks, men who worked hard, kept their heads down, but were constantly stressed about their unpredictable schedules. I gathered them in a corner of the loading dock. "Listen to me," I told them, looking each man in the eye. "I just secured a 2-week management trial for the West Dock. Starting Monday, you don't work for the temporary agency anymore. You work with me. I am guaranteeing you 30 hours a week guaranteed pay, and I will personally ensure that our dock is the most efficient asset in this building. In exchange, I need your absolute loyalty. No lateness, no cutting corners. We operate as a single unit. If one of us stumbles, the rest of us lift him up. Are you in?" They looked at each other, stunned. Here was the youngest guy in the room offering them the very stability they had been praying for. Carlos was the first to step forward. "I'm in, Randy. Tell me what to do." The other 3 followed without hesitation. That weekend, our small living room transformed into an operational headquarters. My mother, despite her physical weakness, sat up in bed with a sharp spark in her eyes that I hadn't seen since she fell ill. Her professional background as a teacher made her incredibly organized. She helped me draft a simple, legally sound partnership agreement, set up a manual bookkeeping ledger, and taught me how to structure clear performance milestones. We called our small venture RS Services, simple, unpretentious, but professional. The first week of the trial was an absolute trial by fire. I didn't sit back and act like a boss. I was on the line with my crew, lifting the heaviest boxes, setting the pace, and coordinating the flow of cargo. Because I was right there in the trenches with them, the men worked with an intensity they had never shown before. We didn't just meet Marcus Vance's structural targets, we completely shattered them. By the end of the first week, the West Dock's operational processing speed had increased by 34%. Not a single box was damaged, and our accuracy rating was a perfect 100%. When Friday arrived, Marcus Vance called me into his office. He didn't say a word. He simply handed me a corporate check made out to RS Services for the full contract amount. "The trial is over, Randy," Marcus said, his voice laced with genuine respect. "The contract is yours indefinitely. And honestly, the supervisor on the East Dock is complaining about his crew today. Can you source me 5 more men by Monday morning?" I felt a surge of emotion hit my chest so hard it nearly took my breath away. I walked down the stairs, stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, and walked into a secluded corner of the rail yard where no one could see me. For the first time in years, I let the tears fall. They weren't tears of sadness or despair, they were tears of profound realization. I had just unlocked the door. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance, scraping by on hourly wages. I was an economic engine creating opportunities for others. I went home and placed that first corporate check on my mother's lap. My siblings gathered around, their eyes wide as they looked at the figures. It was enough to cover our rent for the next 3 months, secure a full inventory of groceries, and pay for my mother's next 2 medical specialist appointments. That evening, we didn't eat in silence. We sat around our wooden table, and for the first time since my father's catastrophic financial loss, we laughed. My father even looked up from his quiet corner, a faint glimmer of pride breaking through the deep fog of his depression. But as I sat there watching my family smile, I knew this was just the absolute beginning. I had proven the model in a single warehouse dock, but a city is full of warehouses. A country is full of industries that are constantly starved for reliable, managed, disciplined labor. I was 17 now, my high school equivalency diploma was nearly complete, and the vision in my mind was expanding far beyond the walls of Vance Logistics. I was preparing to scale this model into something the city had never seen before. But as any builder knows, the bigger the structure you try to build, the more severe the resistance you will face from the elements around you. That is the conclusion of part 2 of Randy's incredible journey. Think about the profound shift that just occurred in that young man's life. He went from being an hourly employee wrapped up in his own exhaustion to becoming a solution provider for an entire industrial facility. He didn't wait for someone to come along and hand him a business management degree. He didn't wait for his family's debt to miraculously vanish. He looked at a broken system, the chaotic, high-turnover nature of manual labor, and he built a human bridge of reliability and dignity. Randy discovered the ultimate secret to true growth. If you want to lift yourself out of a dark place, find a way to lift others up along with you. I want to speak directly to the person listening to this who feels stagnant right now. You might have a job, you might have a small business, or you might be working a side hustle, but you feel like you are just spinning your wheels on a muddy track. You're survival-oriented. You're constantly looking down at your own feet, just trying not to trip over the next bill or the next crisis. I challenge you today to lift your gaze. Look at the environment around you. Look at your workplace, your community, or your industry. Where is the friction? Where is the pain point? Where is the inefficiency that is causing stress for others? The moment you stop focusing entirely on what you can get from the world and start focusing on what problem you can solve for it, your financial and personal evolution begins. Your struggle is not meant to paralyze you, it is meant to specialize you. The hours Randy spent working until his fingers bled in that commercial sink gave him an elite work ethic that the average person simply could not match. When he stepped into that warehouse, what felt like crushing labor to others felt like a manageable task to him. His hardship had become his competitive advantage. Do not complain about the weight of your current cross. That very cross is building the bone density, the muscle mass, and the structural resilience you will need to carry the massive responsibilities of your future success. You are being trained in the dark for a platform that will eventually shine in the light. Remember the absolute law of the harvest. We reap what we sow, but we only reap if we push through the entire length of the tunnel. Randy didn't stop when he got the raise to $8 an hour. He didn't stop when he made $12 an hour. He kept moving, keeping his word, respecting his team, and protecting his family. He moved through the darkness, step by agonizing step, because he knew that the only way out is through. If you are in a tunnel right now, do not stop. Do not sit down on the cold, damp ground and accept the darkness as your permanent home. The light at the end of that tunnel isn't a mirage. It is real, it is waiting, and it belongs to the person who refuses to let their circumstances dictate their character. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Keep grinding with absolute integrity. Treat your people with respect, honor your commitments, and watch how the universe eventually opens doors that no man can shut. Get ready for part 3, family, because the story of RS Services is about to go from a local neighborhood crew to an unstoppable industrial force. This is RiseWell TV. Keep your vision sharp, keep your backbone unbroken, and keep moving all the way to the absolute end.